Welcome back to the tutorial series on Learning Node. This is video 4. In this video, I'm going to talk about the concepts of let and const, which are part of the JavaScript ES6. So far, we've actually been using JavaScript ES5, which is a way of describing the different versions of JavaScript. We can actually use newer functionality that's part of newer versions of JavaScript right within Node itself. So instead of using var, var to define variables, we can use two other keywords, let, and const, const. So let's change these. Over here in another JS, instead of using var, I'm going to use let and save. So in Windows, Control S. Over here in index.js, I'm going to change line 1 instead of var, const for const, and save. So Control S in Windows, Command S in Mac, or File, Save as well. Now let's rerun the commands we've been looking at. node space index.js 9. So notice it didn't do anything. We're still seeing the same thing we saw before. But we moved it from using var, var, to let, and a const, const. What in the world just went on here? Well, let's build on what we already know about Node, which is to say it is JavaScript on the command line, or JavaScript outside of a browser. The two keywords we just used are newer ways of defining variables that influence how they can be used. So instead of using var, var, we want to start using let and const, let and const. So what are the difference between these? Well, if we have a variable that might change its value, we want to start using let. We have a variable we're going to set up, but its value won't change, or we want to protect ourselves from changing it. We want to use const, const. Const values, or constant values, are variables we set up that won't change values when we are running them. They're the most useful for values that are things like constants, so values of mathematics, or things we are importing from other files. So we are using require to build on the concept of the previous video with require and module.exports. In this video, we're now going to start using const, const, to define variables that are values we have imported from other files. The reason why we want to start doing that is we want to protect ourselves from accidentally changing them in some way. We also want to use let instead of var because it will allow us to set up variables that might change instead of variables that won't or we don't want to change using const. So we've now moved from earlier versions of JavaScript into newer versions of JavaScript, using these two new keywords in place of var instead, which now inform us and Node of how we want to use these variables. For let variables, there are variables that may change. For const variables, these are variables that will not, or we want to protect ourselves from changing. So for example, if I attempt to change the value of example here on line 3 to 10, and I run this code, so node space index.js on the command line, this will do an error. The error is assignment to constant variable, which is a type error, which is an error. I can't do it. So this will protect me from accidentally changing anything I import or require from another file. This is a strong and recommended pattern to get into. because it will protect you from accidentally rewriting that. And so you'll get an error of some sort. We want to export out from run file, as we discussed in the previous video, using module.exports, and import in using the require function in another file. Now, for whatever we require in, we also want to set that up with a constant value or a constant variable, because that value won't change or should not change, and we want to protect ourselves from accidentally changing it. So we want the system to know, hey, I'm saying this is a constant value, it won't change. And then the system knows, wait a minute, if you try to change it, that's an error, you should not be doing that. So that will protect us as developers from accidentally making that mistake. So let for variables that may change, and const for variables that won't or we don't want them to change while we're running this code. These are JavaScript ES6 terms and keywords, and they help us keep track of, as developers, things that may change, things that might change, or are a lot more specific than just the var previous thing we were using. So 2 new keywords that help us monitor as developers. This may change, this won't change, and allow us to do a little bit more planning about how our variables will be used and protect ourselves from accidentally changing things we don't necessarily want to change or may have accidentally changed, and it will throw an error where, okay, I can fix that. So let and const are part of how we want to use moving forward in this video series. Thanks for watching.